So we jump into the panel discussion. The topic is ICT and digital business. Of course, it is one of the pillars of the 4 areas that we're focusing on at this particular forum. Kirk Hamilton will be our esteemed moderator, co-founder and director, Tech Beach Retreat, and I think it would be remiss of me to not mention that in 2021, he was actually selected amongst the honorees of the most influential people, top 100 most influential people of African descent. And of course, he is a countrymate of mine. So Kirk Hamilton, esteemed moderator, I hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. I'd like to welcome everyone to this session. Basically what we have on stage today is a group of people who are trying to transform the Caribbean, leveraging technology at its core to build businesses and drive digital transformation in the region. I don't want to take too long in introducing the session. We're just going to have a conversation around where things are in the Caribbean, where the opportunities sit, and how we're affected by the global landscape. Naturally, we'll speak about what these entrepreneurs do and what they're trying to achieve, and ultimately what they're looking for from the people in this room. So I'll start by just moving to the panelists. Nick, if you want to just go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us what the business does.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Rees. I am the chairman and co-founder of a company based out of Grand Bahama in the Bahamas called KANOO Pays. And what we are doing is we are driving digital adoption in the areas of e-commerce, marketplaces, digital wallets, as well as CBDC transformation and implementation of the sand dollar, which is the world's first central bank digital currency, launched in the Bahamas by the Central Bank of the Bahamas. And so we are extremely honored and proud to be an authorized financial institution, basically building out the rails that will enable businesses, users, as well as governments to utilize CBDC in the future.
Awesome. And just as concise, Larren.
And well, they say brevity is the soul of wit, Kirk. Hi, everyone. I'm Larren Peart. I'm the CEO of Blue Dot Insights. I like to say that we're in the business of peace of mind because we provide our clients with peace of mind in decision-making by providing them with insights from either data or research or any one of the other disciplines. So we're an insights agency focusing on data analytics, modeling, market research, and consumer neuroscience.
Awesome. And Pascal?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Pascal Ellie. I am from Haiti and CEO and founder of Haiti Pay, a fintech based in Haiti proposing digital mobile wallet and payment network, and also president of CellPay, a fintech based in the US connecting the diaspora to their hometown community in the Caribbean.
Awesome. Last but not least, Gordon.
Hi everybody, I'm Gordon Swaby, CEO and co-founder of EDUFOCAL Limited. It's a publicly traded company on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. We offer education at scale, whether at home, in the workplace, and we're looking forward to continuing to transform education in the Caribbean and beyond.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. So when we started Tech Beach back in 2016, the idea was to be able to connect the Caribbean's tech ecosystem with the rest of the world. And while I won't say that anybody here didn't exist back then, the reality is we weren't where I think we are, where these individuals can stand on a stage as what I believe are power players in the market. Everyone on this stage has raised capital for their businesses and have, I would say pretty robust platforms now, which is very new to the landscape. And I know we have many, many more entrepreneurs in the region who are starting to perform well, bridging gaps and reaching out beyond borders. So I just want each of you, again, maybe I'll run from Gordon back in, to share your thoughts on what you think the current state of play in the region is, where you see positive direction and where you see us needing to fill some gaps. but I'll ask you to be concise again.
So, I think that technology and ICT in the Caribbean is evolving in a very exciting way. I think that there's a change of guard happening, and I think that there are a lot of young people who are innovating in their respective spaces. However, when you compare ourselves to our American counterparts, other developed countries, you realize that the kind of capital needed to, materially transform economies, we're still not seeing that in the Caribbean. When I look at myself, our first raise was in 2012, and it was $13,000 US, and I was jumping for joy. I was so excited to raise $13,000. I had no context outside of that. I thought there's a lot of money to raise, and only to see it finish like 2 months later. But I think things are changing. I think that the size of capital needed is coming around, and I'm very excited about the future.
Okay, awesome. And Gordon has the first technology startup in the Caribbean to go public. So that $13,000 now reflects a multi-million-dollar market cap company on a stock exchange. For those who don't know, Jamaica's stock exchange, where the stock trades, has been ranked as one of the top stock exchanges in the world numerous years in a row. From 2015 to 2018, it was actually ranked as the highest performing stock exchange in the world by Bloomberg. A lot of investors aren't aware of this, but especially when we look at what's happening in U.S. equities right now, we're very hopeful that Jamaica's stock market, Trinidad stock market, etc., will actually outperform the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange this year. But Pascal, I'll allow you to tell us a bit about your outlook, especially giving us some context from a non-English speaking Caribbean territory, and maybe even some perspective as a founder who is a woman operating in the Caribbean, and what's that like as well?
Yes, thank you. We've been in operation in Haiti for some time now, and we had covered the market there, and we quickly realized that without exposure to a more global market within the Caribbean, it's quickly, we're losing interest from the investors. So exposing our innovation and technology and interconnecting with different markets is very important to emphasize on the possibilities and opportunities of growth and make it more interested for potential, to attract investors in the region. So for us, that has been the next stage of our roadmap, is really to establish interesting and viable partnership within the Caribbean and even the Latin America at some point, to have a larger opportunity for the potential investors to start looking at us as a very interesting market. Yeah, awesome. So that has been our experience so far, and it's promising. It's promising. It's attracting more interest from the potential investors. Yeah.
Okay, awesome stuff. Larren?
Yeah, so from my point of view, especially where I sit at a data company, certainly 8 years ago when I started Blue Dot, there wasn't anyone else talking about data. And we've been championing how much of an enabler of growth, just making decisions with data can be. So, I'm sure we're all accustomed to hear going into a presentation and seeing a marketing manager or CEO say, reference statistics out of the US or North America, such as the size of the payments market in the US is X billion, right? There's never any local data, right? And that's the mission that we're on. And definitely I see a lot more companies taking data analytics and just, understanding the power of data more seriously. And I think we are moving in that direction and in that right direction.
Oh, thank you. Nick?
So, boy, financing in the Caribbean is a significant challenge for young entrepreneurs. It's something that I've been actively engaged in for some time. for the past 10 years. And what I've seen is entrepreneurs having to take innovative ways and basically knocking on doors to find that one investor or that one business that will provide you with access to your capital to enable your vision and your ideas to grow. And what I also have an accounting firm, and so from this perspective, I see a lot of talent. And then as we come out in the Caribbean and we begin to, go into other markets, we see, wow, like the talent base in the Caribbean is, superior. I think that the talent base in terms of what we have in the Caribbean, the mindset, the vision, the education, and the ability, it needs to be enabled, right? And we have not been enabled by being given the access that we need to foster that talent, vision, and ideas, right? And so one of the things that we've, basically embraced now is through this partnership with Draper Startup House, collaborating with Draper Startup House, Draper University, Tim Draper. How do we bring that Silicon Valley investment mindset and drop that into the Caribbean such that we can now facilitate those ideas, nurture those ideas, and fund those ideas. So really the model that we're looking at now is to find, fund, and foster innovation. And so we've launched in collaboration with the Draper University, the KANOO Innovation Hub. And the KANOO Innovation Hub is based in the Bahamas, but it's open to everyone in the Caribbean to come, learn, participate, and get your ideas funded. At the end of the pipeline is an opportunity to be funded up, seed capital up to $3 million, and this is for your idea. Not only do they fund your idea, but they enable you with the access to coders, access to international networks, relationships. And so from our perspective, we had been lucky in terms of having the right backers and the financial partners within our own shareholding base to push forward, but we want to enable others. And so that's where we need to get as a region. How do we collaborate and enable each other? A rising tide raises all boats.
Awesome. Well, we'll be collaborating, as I think you know. But I'll point to what I think is a changing of the guard represented by the individuals on the stage as well. Years ago, it wasn't the norm for Caribbean entrepreneurs to be pushing out in numbers beyond the shores of their islands. Everyone on this stage owns a business that has representation in multiple jurisdictions. Obviously, what we believe, I think I can speak for you guys with this, we believe that technology enables us to reach out much broader, more quickly. And what you see here is a group of entrepreneurs who are quite aggressive about driving transformation in the region. However, as you pointed to Nick, what's lacking in the market is there's still that challenge of access to capital. I'm pointing to the investors in the room to say, the Caribbean still doesn't have an established venture capital firm focused on technology, right? And so different people are trying things to fill the gap, but that's definitely something that we need to see. I want to get more conversational, guys, and have you all maybe even intersect with each other or do a bit of interruption as you speak with each other. Speaking to more of the journey and the path of how you've gotten to where you are. Nick, you just pointed to something that I think is pretty interesting to kickstart the conversation. You're an accountant by training who has built a firm in accounting, but now has stepped into tech, right? Can you speak to us a bit about that journey, what you think the takeaways from your background are that have enabled you to be doing what you're doing in the tech space? What makes that background investable for the audience?
So from my personal perspective and my personal journey, I would say, and this is something that each person and that I advise clients or persons coming to me and asking me, well, how did you do this? Or how do you do that? How can I do this? The first place that, you know, everyone must start with is their sense of self, knowing themselves, and being able to align and find their purpose, right? And being a student of learning, of knowledge, and advancing. So I would say, you know, I was lucky in terms of my placement in life and the opportunities that I had, persons that I would have met, connected with. I'm an Olympian, a two-time Olympian. A lot of those values in terms of the training, the dedication, the sacrifice for a long-term goal, I'm finding align a lot with the business world in terms of there's the same principles involved. Learning how to win, how to lose. From the accounting, I never planned to be an accountant. I actually engaged in the ACCA because I'm more of a business entrepreneur. So I did my MBA. I'm a finance and economics. You know, I did that in undergrad. And so, you know, on reading a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it said, you know, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should understand accounting. And lo and behold, I saw an ad for the ACCA, and I dove right in. It took me, you know, almost 8 years to complete it. It was 14 exams. And I then found myself evolved into having my own accounting firm. And in the accounting firm, I ended up doing more capital raising, business planning, helping others raise money. We were able to pull off the largest greenfield investment in the history of the Bahamas, starting with zero capital, project in excess of $50 million. It's called the Fusion Superplex. It's the largest IMAX screen in the region. We've got a 40X, 2 VIP theaters, and working and collaborating with persons. So everything I do is like you know, one thing my father always taught me is whatever you do in life, you help people, right? And so that has always been my approach, and one thing has always led to the next. The accounting firm actually blossomed into the technology company through a chance meeting and seeing an opportunity and really grabbing that and running with it. And now we're into the private equity space. And so that is beginning to take its own legs in itself. So I would say, you know, focus on learning first, purpose, finding your purpose, and understanding your worth and your value. And luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So you have to be patient and walk that journey and follow your intuition, and you know, be positive above all things. Like,
What was the Olympic sport?
I was a swimmer.
Okay,
I
awesome.
was a swimmer.
Michael Phelps era, or?
So Michael Phelps and I swam the same event,
Awesome.
100 butterfly. I always tell people I didn't swim with Michael Phelps. I swam behind Michael Phelps, right? But yeah, so interesting, and so it's great to come back to Trinidad. I do my only experience with Trinidad would be at Carifta Games. I have a number of friends here that I swam with. George Bovel, a guy that is an Olympic medalist for the Caribbean. I watched him win that medal. He swam with Michael Phelps as well, and he actually swam with Michael Phelps. So it's an honor to be here, man, and it's you know, to connect with Caribbean persons. I think we have a lot that we share in common, and you know, going island hopping, we're seeing there's advantages here, disadvantages here, commonalities, challenges. We can connect the Caribbean through technology, and collectively we can solve all of our own problems.
Yeah.
I really believe that, and that is something that, you know, KANOO I see as charting that course, right? And so everything we do, I was just, you know, we were just sharing, is about partnership, collaboration. How do we tie into, we don't have all the ideas. You've got an idea, you've got an idea, you've got an idea as well as you. How do we bring all of this together through synergy, through technology, through collaboration and sharing, such that the rising tide raises all boats?
So I think that is a part of the culture shift that's occurring, right? I think we all came up in an era where, you know, the conversation wasn't open, transparent, talk to everybody about what you're doing. You know, you grew up kind of with this idea that the bank steals the concepts that you put forward as opposed to funds them. But now we're living in an age where we do this. I don't think, you know, many before us used to sit on these platforms and sit on these stages and share stories. And that's a big part of funny enough, economic development. So a platform like this is actually quite important. But Larren, I know you're doing business between the Caribbean and quite a bit of North America as well. So share a bit with us, that journey, how you've gotten from nobody talks about data to having representation as far as Toronto, etc.
Right, so the journey has been pretty interesting. Like I said, when I started, there was no one talking about data really, but like I said, the companies, the private sector and the public sector in Jamaica and across the Caribbean has realized that, in order to grow and compete internationally, you have to, have data analytics at your core. For myself, in terms of expanding, Jamaica has a little bit under 3 million people, so there's a finite market there. When you go to the wider Caribbean, I think 16 million or some figure like that. So, the question is, why not expand? You almost don't have a choice but to expand and go beyond your borders. And, like you said, there has been a lot of, through Tech Beach and other facilities like that, there has been a lot of collaboration. I think we're forming our own, if I dare say, our own version of CARICOM amongst our young entrepreneurs. So yeah, definitely, I see further collaboration happening. I already have employees here in Trinidad, and that team is growing, and we'll be launching from here into the Eastern Caribbean. So yeah, that's our journey and our trajectory.
So we're switching it around, because there was a time where the investment only went from Trinidad to Jamaica, but now we're flipping the script.
Definitely.
Pascal, I know you have a banking background, and now you're building technology to effectively, I'm not going to, I say disrupt, but effectively shift the way that money moves. Tell us a bit about your journey and ultimately what you all are achieving.
Yeah, I've always been in some kind of technology project. I remember when I was at university, I launched a company doing website and web design. I guess that was a trend back then. But yes, I started my career in the banking system and in an insurance company, but with always a mindset of bringing financial inclusion. So with that insurance company, it was the first, we were the first to bring the bank assurance, bringing access to insurance for small incomes. And it was mind-blowing. It was really what led us to transforming the sector of the financial offer in Haiti, at least where we started the company. And when we funded Haiti Pay, for example, it was really with funders with different background, but sharing the problematic of accessing the user and make their product and the availability of their offer to a broader, a larger user base, and that's what got us together. And of course, back then when we had the earthquake and there was no access to financial services at all, and this is where it started that we need to offer a different kind of services, and that's what led us to where we are today. And we strongly believe that the kind of partnership we make along the way make us where we are. And being in fintech doesn't mean necessarily that you have to know a lot to be a specialist in financials, but it's important to understand how to make a product available to a larger user base. So that has been a very interesting journey, and the experience that we share in the Caribbean is very similar from island to island. So it's very interesting to see how we can learn from the experience of other networks and make your offer even better and better as we experience along the way.
I have a quick question. I feel like the world hasn't really shied away from trying to show us the challenging side of Haiti. But how do you feel technology has allowed you, if it has, or impeded in any way with you being able to build a business given the circumstances? And I'm a bit careful. I'm not on the ground in Haiti. I don't want to reflect what we see elsewhere. So I guess it's also just an opportunity to give greater context to us in the audience, as to what it's like doing business in Haiti, but also, just how tech helps you to better navigate.
Well, we believe that technology and innovation is the key for the future and for economic development. I'm going to go with a concrete example where we're working, and that the panel this morning was very interesting for me. We're working with a community of farmers and who already have a way of doing saving and loans using cash, but within a small community. And we are transforming their way of doing transaction using the technology. And the user, the farmers, they have no issue using the technology. Their issue is their problem going to be solved? And that's what the technology needs to bring, a solution to the specific problem that they have. It's not there to change their way of doing the saving and loans. We have to adapt the technology and continue with the same pattern. And having to bring that solution to them makes it more attractive for the user. And for us, this is what the usage of the technology is bringing. It's solving a specific problem for every community and make it a tool that is important for everyone. And what is interesting with what we're doing with the farmers, for them we're solutioning the payment, access to financial transaction. But on the other side of the transaction, there's the buyer. The buyer needs to know, they need a lot of information. And that's what, again, technology is bringing, is the data. You cannot have any sort of financial development, economic development without having access to that data and to be able to capitalize on that and offer, in our case, better financial services. With data, we can offer better interest rate on loans. We can offer better condition for repayment, etc. So it's bringing a long list of solutions that those communities could not solve with using cash only. So technology and innovation for us is key, and it's getting us to the economic development that we want to see and financial inclusion that is our mission. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that insight. Gordon, I believe you're the youngest entrepreneur to have listed on the stock exchange so far. And interestingly enough, so you're youngest you're turning 32 this year, right? You mixed me up on Twitter this morning. But
32 next week.
You would have been the youngest entrepreneur to take a company public in Jamaica. But the business is now reasonably mature, over 10 years old. Give us some insight into that journey. I think you have a good opportunity to speak to the shifting landscape given where you would have started and where the business is now.
So, I think we have an innovation problem in the Caribbean. We don't have a lack of innovators, but we have an innovation problem, and I believe that young innovators are not being given wind beneath their wings to fly and create solutions for problems that are consistent across the Caribbean, right? I started EDUFOCAL when it was registered November 19, 2010, the day after my 21st birthday, and I had no idea what I was doing, right? I was studying computer science at UTech, and I dropped out UTech, University of Technology in Jamaica. I dropped out because I thought it was a waste of my time, and turns out I was right. But but you know, I was looking for guidance that I could not find, not because the problems were novel, but they were novel within the context of the Caribbean. And 10 years later, while we have made great progress, there are a lot of things that have not been solved. I find too that a lot of people within the context of innovation or within the context of wanting to educate themselves stick to the tried and true path of becoming a doctor or a lawyer, right? When there are opportunities to become something else, right? Now we're entering a phase and a stage of our development regionally where a lot of young people are not getting the kind of return on their investment that they expect. So you go to medical school for 10 years and you know, you graduate, you become a doctor and you're earning less than you expect to earn, right? You migrate to another country thinking that, hey, you've hit jackpot and you're working harder than you'd have worked in the Caribbean and still not earning where you expect to earn, right? You know, so a part of my philosophy, a part of my ethos is, you know, how can we, you know, show people a different path to their own education, and how can that spur development in the Caribbean? You look at, so earlier this year, we purchased a company in the United States, and a part of that process required us registering a subsidiary. I registered that subsidiary in my bedroom in 2 days, right? EDUFOCAL LLC registered in Wyoming, but yet Larren has to come physically to Trinidad and Tobago to register a company. In fact, I was asking Larren earlier, how do you register a company in Trinidad? But the information is widely available online. Similarly, in other Caribbean territories, there is still this deficit around information sharing, and what is considered innovation is not innovation anymore. It shouldn't be innovative to register a company online. Right. I can't sit here on this stage and transfer money to Jamaica easily, right? So, you know, the deficit exists, and, you know, I feel like we are having the same conversations for too long. I lead a team of 50 people, and again, EDUFOCAL is novel within the context of the Caribbean, but a lot of things should be no-brainer, or it is a no-brainer for other parts of the world. So I'm happy to be having this conversation, and I know that we'll continue to.
Well, I think you just opened a nice door there.
Yeah.
And Gordon would have pointed to the beautiful J-curve that I think every entrepreneur here on the stage would have experienced during the pandemic. Not me, just pointing to them, right, and the growth of their businesses. But Gordon, you just actually raised something that I think is very important, that a lot of our entrepreneurs are now seeing. And I'm hopeful that there are people in the room from a policy perspective that can hear this and understand it and maybe even do something about it, right? So it sounds like, and I want each of you to point to your experience with this, but it sounds to me like you were taking a stab at pointing to all the frictions that we have in our market and how they serve as impediments to young people with brilliant ideas. But there's a shift happening where I think young people are starting to find a playbook that takes them outside of the market in order to get things done, even though they can still reside here, right? Yeah. And it's a strange dynamic to me, as I observe that it's almost like we are watching people being able to bypass the systems that we've put in place, but we're not taking the steps to transform those systems to ultimately keep the tax dollars here at the end of the day and keep the revenue and, you know, employment, etc. In place. But I say that against another backdrop, and again, I'm just setting the stage for some responses. We just went through a pandemic. I think the pandemic benefited all of you based on what we saw with technology companies happen around the world. So now we live in a space where we talk a lot about remote work and the openness of opportunity, which you all would then be taking advantage of, right? So it's kind of open-ended what I'm putting on the table, but I want to just discuss that dynamic of, on one end, we want to benefit the region, right? And I think we feel this responsibility. Everybody here resides in the region. Yeah. But on the other end, there's this door that is opening, and Gordon, you're opening a conversation that says, hey, we're starting to go elsewhere and eat the food, right? Yeah. So let's dive deeper into that.
So I think we're ushering in a whole new vista, Kirk. I live and work in Jamaica, and knock on wood, I love Jamaica, I'll never leave Jamaica. But a lot of times I feel like to innovate, we're navigating the Caribbean states that we live in, right? So again, just using the example of registering EDUFOCAL LLC in Wyoming while sitting in my bed. EDUFOCAL LLC as a US entity is benefiting my homeland because we are repatriating the funds back home, right? But the downside, or, you know, I feel like it's like a half-pregnant situation, right? Like, there are things that, or there's more that could be done to benefit the states that we live in that is not happening, right? So why can't somebody easily register an entity in the US, in Jamaica, or any other Caribbean state, right? Why can't I, you know, send money from here to Jamaica? So that's, again, simple things, and I'm not on this platform pretending to know what all the solutions are, because they're very complex problems, right? Mm-hmm. But the current idea of CARICOM, in my opinion, is outdated and needs to be restructured. And young people are, one way or the other, they will reframe what it means, you know, what it means to operate within CARICOM, or the Caribbean context.
So one thing I think is interesting from what you just said, though, is we can probably all agree in this room as to the challenge that someone would face also trying to fix the problems you're pointing to, right? So that overlap of private sector and government/policy is a very difficult one, which I think everybody on the stage knows. But again, you know, just continuing down the line, Pascal.
Yes, I relate a lot to what he's saying, because we have a company registered also in Wyoming. So that was the same experience. That was the same experience. We did it from our office in Haiti, and within 24 hours, the company was set up. But maybe on this stage, we won't be able to discuss how to register a company in Haiti and why it takes like 3 months or 4 to do so. But yeah, and it's expensive for no reason. But wow. The thing is, on my experience in working with regulators, it's important to keep the discussion open and continuous. We started a fintech in a country where there were no regulation for fintech, and it was important, based on our understanding and on our vision of the sector, that we do not leave the whole design thing to the regulator. So we did our part of the work and keep the discussion and say, okay, as a company registered in Haiti and doing fintech, this is how we want it to be, and this is how we wish to see. This is the evolution we are seeing. This is what we are seeing that is benefit to the population, as in terms of financial inclusion, financial education, etc. So keeping that and being part of the discussion along with the regulator, it has its benefits, because at the end of the day, we get a regulation that is, it's a good regulation. There's always way to improvement, and that's why we have to keep working with the central bank to make sure that it's going on the right direction. So I know how frustrating it is to register a company in a country where the laws are very not modern, but it's up to us also to do our part of the work and you know, change things a little bit, a lot, by doing stuff. We even a year ago we launched the first alliance. The Haitian Alliance for Financial Inclusion, just to make sure that we have a seat at the table when we're talking about financial inclusion in Haiti. So it's important to do those kind of things, so we make sure that we're going in the right direction with the regulator.
Oh, for sure.
Kirk, I wanted to make the point and not sound like I'm cynical or doomsday.
No, I'm not saying that.
but on the positive side, right? We were able to, list on the junior market of the stock exchange in Jamaica, raise over $1 million US, and that is a big, positive for Jamaica, one. Two, an important point about being listed on the junior market of the stock exchange is that we don't pay income tax for 5 years in full, and another 5 years you get half off, right? Now, that is important because it actually allows us to be more globally competitive, right? So that's a big thing, that's a big positive. And 5-10 years ago, you would not have a 30-year-old, 31-year-old listing on a stock exchange in the Caribbean raising over $1 million US, right? Now I see, conversations happening now in Trinidad, for example, about, the creation of a junior market here. And again, I think that's a big plus. It creates opportunities for cross-listing and so on and so forth. So in every problem is an opportunity to solve, that issue and create return for yourself and for others. So I think it's important to also set that positive tone.
For sure. Well, there's a reason we're all here, right? And, much like you, we've taken a strategy from about 2017. We've had a US company, but our US company was only set up to solve one simple problem, which is the friction we face with charging credit cards, right? Otherwise, we don't really like to send money that way, but at the end of the day, for the regulation side of it, right, I'll point to Caribbean people are registering companies in the US, generating revenue and happily paying their taxes there, right? And it is because they're simplified processes that allow them to seamlessly do this, right? But I'm gonna open up something to you, Larren. I remember a couple years ago, an investor said something to me in person about how, Kirk, one of the things that investors are typically looking for is, at the end of the day, I want to know that the guy that I'm giving money is not just sitting down at his house in his boxers having this phone call, right? And throughout the pandemic, I kind of thought to myself very often, as many of us did in our home clothes, right? Like, well, here I am, raising money, doing business in this very casual style, right?
In your boxers.
Pardon?
In your boxers, you can say it.
I can in my boxers, right? So there's a transformation happening, right? You and I ran into each other recently. I was at a restaurant with my wife in New York, jumped into a car to head home, and Larren was walking across the street. Right? In New York. And so you're, again, like everyone here, taking your business and generating revenue elsewhere. I'm sure like Gordon with an aim to bring it home and like everyone else on the stage, but tell us a bit about how you're going about things now, post-pandemic.
Right, so case in point, I have my employees in Trinidad. I'm yet to meet them, and they've been with us for over a year, right? But because I've been at the conference, I just haven't gotten a chance to meet them as yet. But we're so leveraged in terms of the services that we provide that companies in North America are using our services, right? Which is also an advantage. Our data science services that we offer in Jamaica are cheaper than what a North American company would provide. So almost from a nearshore outsourcing standpoint, that is a significant advantage to North American companies, right? We have the talent in the Caribbean, we're not short on talent. And it is, what we're doing now is leveraging the talent that we have and exporting our services, because unfortunately, even though there is some take-up of what we do now, the North American companies understand the value of it even more. So we have clients in the US and in Toronto and in Canada, that we do business with, and we're now trying to expand that across the region. But if you'd allow me, Kirk, I wanted to just touch on what Gordon said. Unfortunately, but my company is registered in Delaware, not Wyoming. Unfortunately, the friction exists on the policy side and on the private sector side because there isn't a healthy fear of disruption, right? And it's almost cyclical because there isn't a healthy fear of disruption. The banks don't, up until now, believe that KANOO or SellPay or EasyPay, who is here, would come and disrupt their services. They were able to just sit back and not innovate, right? The fear of disruption was not present. So that's on us tech entrepreneurs, but us tech entrepreneurs, we're not getting the capital, the business community, the investors. You know, if you took a business plan for real estate, Gordon, I've talked about this all the time. If you take a plan to do a real estate development for $20 million to an investor and a similar plan for $20 million in a tech startup, they're going to put their money in real estate, right? So, you know, that whole thinking has to change. The most profitable companies in the world are tech companies, you know?
Yeah.
So.
No, for sure. And one of the things I wanted to point to or get into as well is just post-COVID, do you think we've learned anything, right? But I'll allow you to respond, Larren, and then Nick. And are we doing questions?
Unfortunately, you know, in the early days of COVID, there was all of this talk about digital transformation and the new normal. That didn't happen at all. We have gone back to how we were pre-COVID. You know, there's still lines outside of banks and outside of the tax offices and, you know, outside of these brick and mortar businesses that they should just frankly not be there. Out of remittance services, you know, Western Union, etc. There's still lines there, and the new normal didn't happen in the Caribbean. There was all this talk about it initially, but it just did not happen.
But Larren, I think sometimes too the issue is that people need to be educated about the alternatives that exist.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily blame the private sector or government alone in that regard. I think there needs to be an educational drive. I mean, there are some people who just genuinely will never pay for things online. They prefer to stand up in line.
For sure, for sure.
So there's that.
Yeah, the culture, there has to be a cultural shift as well.
So there's always a need for balance, but
Yeah.
What I would like to add, and I mean, I agree with all the points made, was just that in terms of with this technology evolution and looking at, you know, governments and government services and how that evolves, I think that we all in the Caribbean have, you know, from circumstance, have been ingrained in us a mindset of scarcity, right? Scarce resources, like you said, we protect, we hold information, right? And so we need to break out of that mindset into a mindset of abundance, sharing, knowledge share, meeting and meeting people where they are, because as a technology company, what we found is that, you know, we hear the same cries, like we should do this, we should do that, the government should do this, the government should do that. I personally believe that we, well, in the Bahamas and I think in the Caribbean, we rely too much on government, right? Government serves a purpose. Government should provide infrastructure and should enable fair play. And government should evolve. The market should drive change. So if we see something that needs to happen, go do it, right? And it's as simple as that, right? We need to start developing, we need to stop talking more, right? The talking is helpful, but we actually need to do, right? And so until we start committing to do, like, so every time I have a meeting, okay, what is the action point? What is it that we are going to do, right? And so I think it's getting to the doing and taking a step-by-step approach to it. You know, I'm really proud of what we've done in the Bahamas. Like, the Bahamas has, you know, moved us along. We can register a business online in the Bahamas today, right? And so that is, you know, we've begun to take steps to move the ease of doing business. And so now there's an initiative to sync government services, right? Such that when I open a business, you gotta go get an NIB number, you gotta go to Ministry of Works, get approval for your location. Why should I give the same information to 5 different departments, right? And so but again, you know, we have this scarcity mindset. Oh, well, that causes everything, the bottleneck, because we don't want to open the floodgates and allow innovation to happen, right? And so that's really our challenge and charge as a region, is to open the floodgates. Us as young persons, we live in a microwave generation. We want it now, we want it today. And, you know, we have to find a middle ground and be patient and meet people where they are so that we could hold their hands along the digital transformation journey. Because like you say, there are persons that want to stand in the line, right? But let's stand next to them in the line while we educate them that, hey, there's another line that here's all of these benefits. Here's how it solves your problem, right? And so this is what I think that our charge, our generation's charge is leading the way and kind of showing how new business in the Caribbean and the region can be done in a more inclusive way where we focus on abundance, sharing, knowledge share, collaboration. And I think that's what we're all here for.
No, for sure. And I think what we've discussed is, at the end of the day, I always tell people you don't want to ultimately bypass regulation or do anything nefarious, right? But at the end of the day, innovation is not about stopping at roadblocks, right? That's the whole point of what we do, is that when you hit a roadblock, you find another way. I think what we're doing is alerting the region to the reality that there's a methodology that people are now finding and a playbook that serves them well as a matter of need, but from a long-term perspective, we should act on as quickly as possible. Whether you're public sector, private sector entrepreneurs, etc., banks, we need to act on as quickly as possible so that we don't end up in a place where ultimately we have citizens who are stateless, right? And you basically live in a place, but technically you don't earn in the place, right? So for me, despite having a US presence, for example, that's something that when I realized this was possible, when I was in college, the way it was made to seem was having a US business as a non-US person was like doomsday, right? You don't want to mess around, things will happen. Now what I see happening is that they're coming to us and they're saying, hey, here's how we make it easy, here's how you can get things done, come this way. And if we act in a way as a region, no matter which space you come from, where we don't pay attention to that movement that is happening, right, then I think we're going to be challenged. But I want to open up the floor to any questions that we may have for the panelists. And just say name, please, and where you're from.
Hello. Hi, my name is Pauline Joseph. I own a company, AC Marketing Caribbean. And just like most people on this stage, I actually registered my business in Delaware. So I've been listening and very informative, actually a little bit inspirational. But as a small business owner, there's so much going from all corners, as everybody can appreciate. And I'm listening, but where is the support for small business owners who can't afford to pay $150 for this event? Where is the support for the person who doesn't actually have that ability to, go online and check it out? Because at some point in time, you see something, you're driven, you have that hope, but your environment doesn't reflect that. So you jump on a plane and you see that option. What's actually going to drive that person to come back to the place that they came from beyond this idea of, well, I was born here, so I have to come back here. So, it's almost like the brain drain is happening, and how do we create an environment that allows that small business owner to feel supported? Because I know you mentioned earlier we can't rely on government, but there's a reason why there's a Silicon Valley. That's actually based on public sector and support. So if I have to be worrying about going to register my business and it's going to take 3 months, Trinidad might be a day, and then you have to sort out yourself with the private sector to organize your bank account, and then I have to figure out how to actually get my e-commerce so it is viable. So at what point, the question for everybody is, do you go, okay, where do I go, basically, is a big question mark.
So I don't feel like you should feel compelled to operate your business in an environment that's not conducive to it. If it's not
conducive to where you're operating it, then leave. So for me, for example, with EDUFOCAL, there is a deficit, there's an educational deficit across the Caribbean, and I see a massive business opportunity in the Caribbean. So while I love Jamaica, I'm not staying in Jamaica with my company because I love Jamaica only. It is because there is a real opportunity, right? So, but the fact is, business is hard everywhere, but it's harder in some places than in others. But that in and of itself, it is an opportunity. If you, do your evaluation, it makes sense. So if you think your business can flourish elsewhere, then do it and find other ways to contribute back to your home if you're so inclined. That's my advice.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's important to look beyond the borders, go elsewhere, but also try to partnership with other countries, other similar business in other markets that would benefit. The exchange would definitely benefit the businesses, the small businesses that can afford to have a presence elsewhere. So partnership is always a good strategy, and also shared experience and networking and discuss your experience with others is important, so you get an insight of what's being done elsewhere and improve how small business can flourish within some difficult environment. So that would be my additional.
My response would be, community is important, all right? I'm not sure what the entrepreneurial space is like in where you're from, but that has helped us in Jamaica a lot, just having access to other entrepreneurs who we can share our experiences with and share ideas from. Coincidentally, Kirk, somebody asked me 2 nights ago why they should come to Tech Beach. Terry Carroll was there, and my response, one word, I said, energy.
Yeah.
Because when you interact with entrepreneurs like yourself, and you have that shared experience, you learn so much from each other, and even if just from a positivity, like a good energy, motivational standpoint, these things are important. Yeah.
I would echo what everyone has said, but I believe your question was, where is the support?
Yeah.
For those that don't have access to come here or go there or share and collaborate. And so you can, if you know of persons or anyone, that's interested, that has ideas, you can go to www.kanooinnovationhub.com. It's open to everyone in the Caribbean, throughout CARICOM, and we are today providing access to those individuals that you're speaking to. There are a number of corporates, partners that are on board. They're providing scholarship opportunities to the Draper University, and so this is something that where you really have an opportunity to change lives. Now, it is a competitive environment, and it's for the best and brightest to shine, but it provides you access to an opportunity that can afford you great success. And so if you ask for your question as to where is the support, this is where we put our money where our mouth is, and KANOO Innovation Hub. You can check it out online.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Good stuff. Any other questions? I did just want to point to, as you mentioned, Nick, with entrepreneurship at the end of the day does ultimately pick on the most persistent, the most willing to go after what they want, right? And so at the end of the day, the entrepreneurs who end up being most revered are the people who fight their way into a room like this, and the people who don't have internet access but drive or find a way for miles every day to end up in a space where there is public internet, etc. We don't necessarily have the full-on solution, but there is that part of what people need to carry as a part of their culture in order to bypass a lot of the challenges that we've all shared today, and that happens just about anywhere in the world.
Yeah, man. Speaking of problems, right? And what Nicholas just said about the Innovation Hub, I think what's interesting is happening in the Caribbean is that private companies are starting to take up the roles of what the public sector really should be doing. And from the panelists on stage, I just want to hear from you guys on how important you think that, private equity was, or, actually grinding and bootstrapping your business was compared to the support that you would have gotten from the public sector.
So before we do it, really quick, guys, just pay attention to the confidence monitor. But
Yes, real quick, I don't want to waste the time, but I disagree that private it should be the responsibility of public. We are all of a collective responsibility. We all make up one mind, essentially, and I think we all have a purpose to serve, and so that's really what drives us. Not so much as the government should do this or public. It's we all have a role to play. And
I just feel like the weight is kind of shifted more towards, if you want to get action done, the private sector seems to be the one standing up and actually driving things forward. That's kind of the point, yeah.
The public sector for me is just from a policy standpoint. I could spend an hour talking to you about private equity and my journey with raising money. But yeah, I'm looking at the clock.
Yeah. But I would say the same, that public sector is really about
enabling
regulation
the policy.
and enabler. Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't be raising money from public sector for your private entities. The bottom line. You shouldn't be raising money from the public sector for your private entity, generally speaking. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, I think like support grants,
Yeah,
in that case, that's fine.
So luckily in Jamaica, the DBJ has started a pretty amazing grant program. So you can now get grants for patents, and you can get innovation grants from our Development Bank of Jamaica. So they are playing a role, and they're championing some of the initiatives.
So I think there are numerous opportunities in the region. Not that they're enough, but even the organizing entity for the conference, the Caribbean Export Development Agency, they provide grants in various cycles. The Caribbean Development Bank does the same, and it's not discounting the idea that it may be challenging to find, but I do believe if there's one of the challenges of the Caribbean actually is that entrepreneurs start out thinking that a grant is what they need, right, as one thing, and that in many instances the only path to trying to get funding for some people is to go and try to get a grant. But there are quite a few opportunities out there, not taking away from the idea that maybe we could have more, maybe it could be easier, maybe there could be grander programs, but there's certainly entities trying to do this. The screen is now red, so I realize we're in a deficit of time.
And Terry Curl stood up.
Terry stood up, but my shameless plug, as Larren pointed to, we invite everyone here to participate in Tech Beach in Jamaica in December 8 to 10, and you can just visit techbeach.net, and we collaborate with a lot of the entities that I just mentioned here, the Caribbean Export Development Agency and the Caribbean Development Bank, etc. But what I believe this event is about, and what ultimately all of us here are trying to achieve, is creating a space where people can come together to form a collective where they can be supported, right? And we can realize not only our individual objectives, but our shared objectives towards a more prosperous future for the Caribbean. I think if one thing I want to ensure that we take away from this panel is that there are people in the Caribbean who are innovative, who are building companies leveraging technology in the same style that we look for elsewhere in the world and admire when we look at the big companies that are in some instances now facing some serious challenges. But if you believe in technology, then I'm just saying to everyone here that it is very possible in the Caribbean, and we have a great testament to that right here on the stage. Thank you.
I know that we're almost at the end of the day, but I think that this panel discussion got a lot of us quite engaged. I think we can do a much better job. Let me just say that it is particularly pleasing to see a Haitian participating, and I'm going to tell you why. I host quite a lot of conferences locally, regionally, even internationally, and I almost never see someone who is not just Haitian but representing an ICT and also female. And I think that in and of itself is absolutely amazing. And I just wanted to truly acknowledge the presence of Pascal and just say thank you so very much, because I know that where you sit, well, although you are literally sitting, but where you sit, I know that there are others who are watching on and who will be inspired by the work that you do. And of course, I want to just acknowledge all of the youngsters. Are you guys are millennials, right? You're not like Gen Zs or Gen Xers, right? You're like, not baby boomers though. Larren is the boomer. It is nice to see, youngsters just paving the way. I know back home, these guys represent the future for a lot of us. And so thank you so very much for all of that.